Historically, the Korean peninsula was always unified as one Korea. Even when the other states would conquer the region, such as Imperial Japan, the country was never split into North and South. At the end of World War II, Korea was relinquished from Japanese control, and the region was split by the 38th parallel, where the North was a communist puppet state under the Soviet Union, and the South was a capitalist puppet state under the United States. Despite the Soviets and the Americans being allies in World War II, ideological differences forced the two countries to part ways and commence the Cold War.
In 1948 and 1949, both the Soviet Union and the United States retreated their troops from the region. Unhappy with the border, however, North Korea declared a war of aggression and invaded South Korea, capturing the capital, Seoul, in only 3 days. As the North continued pushing south, they nearly captured the entire peninsula except for the southern region of Pusan. The United Nations created a 16-country army and pushed the North back to the Chinese-North Korean border. Fearful of invasion, then Chinese leader Mao Zedong sent hundreds of thousands of troops to defend their communist neighbor from defeat and pushed back the UN forces. By the end of the war, the country was split along the demilitarized zone, or the DMZ, and North and South Korea remained sworn enemies to this day.
With political turmoil between communist and capitalist countries remaining to this day and worldwide, fear of the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un may have one overarching question: how can we reunify the Korean peninsula? Returning Korea to her former glory is no simple task. Ideological differences and propaganda had made the two nations have an undeniable fear of each other. Though reunification seems impossible, it isn't a task not worth attempting. Western morality seeks to give asylum to North Korean civilians. Granted, pictures from inside the country show many of its people trapped in labor camps and malnourished. Today, we're going to show 3 ways the peninsula can reunify under one Korea.
Northern Revolution, Civil War overthrow of government. The Korean Spring within the upcoming decade seems to be inevitable, with more information being funneled into the country and into civilian hands about how prosperous the outside world is. The people of North Korea could ask the same question East Berliners asked in the late 1980s. Why should we stay here when the people on the other side are the same as us, yet prospering? Further exposure to the outside world to North Korean civilians quite has the possibility to result in a civil war and an overthrow of the central government. However, this isn't as easy as a task to conduct. At the kingdom's current state, a war between civilians and the government is more than likely to see Kim Jong-un prevail. 25% of the North Korean GDP goes to military funding. Extensive funding along with North Korea's 945,000 active military personnel and 5.5 million in reserves. The North Korean military is quite a force to fight against. While the nation's military seems to be getting stronger, a possible coup seems to be getting weaker. From 2007 to 2017, the number of privately owned firearms amongst North Korean civilians dropped from 130,000 to 76,000.
A second plausible option would have a puppet leader, an already elite in the North Korean government to be groomed to run the country under a new reform. The most likely candidates would be a Kim family member. Since Kim Jong-un does not have a child to be heir if he were to die, he has 3 siblings that would take his throne: Kim Jong-chul, Kim Yo-jong, and Kim So-sung. However, these 3 candidates have already displayed undeniable loyalty to the regime. The most likely candidate that would be willing to a regime change is Kim Jong-un's half-brother Kim Jong-nam. It's speculated that Kim Jong-nam is already being groomed by outside countries to perform a regime change in North Korea. Unfortunately, while on a trip in Malaysia, Kim Jong-nam was assassinated in February of 2017 with a nerve agent. He was murdered because the North Korean government had fears of him conspiring with foreign governments.
And the third option would be a full-scale invasion. The riskiest yet most feasible passage to Korean reunification is an invasion of North Korea. Stubborn in their ways, the Kim regime is more than unlikely to seek cooperation with the South and relinquish their power to a democracy. An all-out ambush conducted by the United States and its allies could result in a collapse of the North Korean government. A highly strategized and well-coordinated attack could result in the death of Kim family members and highly ranked officials. To do so, you would need to bolster the amount of military troops and assets along neighboring countries previous to the attack being conducted, just enough to overwhelm the enemy. The faults in this plan lie in enhanced technology and threat of a large-scale war. Migrating mass amounts of military assets near North Korea is seemingly impossible to go undetected. If spotted, this would give Kim Jong-un enough time to strike first, launching missiles at large foreign cities such as Tokyo and Seoul. This could result in millions of innocent lives perishing before the Hermit Kingdom collapses. Likewise, North Korea has two powerful allies in the form of China and Russia. Historical enemies, a war between NATO and China and Russia, has been called by many as, quote, the end of humanity.